Hello, good morning. It is the first Sunday in August. I want to introduce my friend, Pastor Leslie McCrory. Leslie is my neighbor, and she is a minister at Urban Light Community Church. And we're going to go through the text together this morning. Leslie, thanks for being here. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14, if you want to turn in your Bible there, beginning in verse 13. Leslie, you want to introduce yourself any more than I just did?
Well, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm thankful that you invited me here. I've known Josh for something like 16, 17 years, and came to this area largely because of book studies in Josh's house that you were leading.
All right.
So it's been a good ride.
That's a long time ago.
It has been a really long time ago.
Yeah.
So I've enjoyed learning together with you and seeing Scripture differently with you over the years, so I look forward to doing that today.
Thanks. We're going to stay apart, and you might notice this sculpture in the back. This is by a gentleman named Timothy Schmalz, who does sculptures like this around the world. This one is called When I Was in Prison. When I Was in Prison, from Matthew 25. That's just our centerpiece. All right. So the story is that John the Baptist has been killed. Herod had wanted him dead, but he didn't really have the guts to go through with it, didn't want to pay the price. But at a party, a feast that Herod threw, there was a woman there who asked Herod for a favor, and he said, whatever. And she said, give me John's head on a plate.
Yep.
And so John lost his head. You know what I forgot? My icon of John. Have I shown you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. It's John the Baptist. It's called John the Forerunner. And he's standing there, and he has a basket, and his head is in a basket. And so
It's also on his body?
yes, he's in full body, carrying his own head. And if you stare at it long enough, this is great talking about it but not having it to show you. But if you stare at it long enough, there's just enough hint in his eyes that it's a little bit defiant.
I bet it is.
Yeah. And so while he lost his head, yet he still has it,
Yep.
in the resurrection. So Herod's feast, John dies. Jesus immediately tries to withdraw. We were talking before we turned the camera on, and this is the 5th time in the book of Matthew that Jesus withdraws after either political or religious persecution. So his cousin, the leader of this movement of repentance and love and justice, is killed by the state. And you can imagine Jesus feeling like he is sucker punched right in the gut. It's like one of those situations where things are really difficult, and then you recognize, not only can they get worse, but they are going to get worse.
Yeah, this is escalating.
That's right. I think about the coronavirus numbers, the cases going up, the deaths going up, about people talking about canceling elections in this democracy.
Or at least postponing them.
Yeah. And we're about ready to go back to school. Should we not? Sort of in a cynical way, and then I'm going to let you respond to everything. In a cynical way, I don't want who's going to be the first hero student in Delaware County, right? who's going to be the first hero teacher in Delaware County. I am not prepared for that.
And by that you mean like the first person to come down with it, who's like,
I mean it in actually a more cynical way, like someone, there's a good chance someone will die, and then the community will call them a hero.
yeah.
And that feels like a sucker punch right in the gut to me. Okay, your turn. When you start to approach this feeding of the 5,000, where are you?
Yeah, reading it in this context, we're always reading scripture, both for the context it's in, but since it's alive, it's always speaking to the context we're in,
Yeah.
which helps us, in part, see it differently every time. So I'm reading it this time in my context from my perspective of a situation that medically, politically, everything does seem to be escalating quickly here. And this real feeling of like a real threat. And there are many ways that people could feel threatened these days, and I know the ways that I do, but in a situation like that, thinking about Jesus withdrawing, I just feel it a lot differently than I felt it in the past. Whereas in the past I've always thought like, oh, Jesus is so sad because he lost his friend and family member, and John meant a lot to him, and so he is personally, individually sad and leaving to go do his personal, individual grieving. And just realizing how much more complicated and how many more layers there probably are to be read into what Jesus is doing here, in reasons that we go away whenever we feel like that things are escalating, why we would need some space, why we would seek a desolate area, and what it means that people come there and that there is a gathering there in a desolate place in times when things are escalating really quickly. And what Jesus' heart is for people being together in this desolated place whenever things are amazingly unpredictable in places of power.
Amazingly unpredictable in places of power. That hits the nail on the head. And yeah, it's sort of, he's getting the heck out of Dodge for a bit, right?
He very well could be.
Is that what they say in Eastern Kentucky?
I don't know where I picked that up, but I know that, and I'm from Eastern Kentucky, so.
Get the heck out of Corbin?
Get out of Corbin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the extent of my jokes this morning.
That's just fine.
Okay. Amazingly unpredictable. We have a recognition that it's going to get worse.
Yeah, Jesus knows he's going to die from, I don't know how long
Right.
in his humanity
At some
he's
point.
known that, but
Right.
he's not unaware of that.
Right.
And yet right now is not the time he's going to do that. He's
Right.
leaving
Right.
and finding people together in a community
Yep.
in that place.
Yep. So he leaves, tries to get alone time, retreat, and the people follow him. And I'll tell you that the end of this text says that there are 5,000 men, along with women and children, or wives and kids. So we're looking possibly at 20. If it's a family of 4, it's 20,000. If it's a family of 5, it's 25,000 that are gathered here, and Jesus is teaching them.
And isn't that interesting? It's just come to me. Isn't it interesting that a whole household would go to here, or go to be in this time? Not just the head of household,
Right.
but the entire
The whole
household
house.
would leave their house
Right.
and come out here.
Right. Yeah. Regardless of age, the kids come too.
Yep.
All together. Yeah. Okay, can I read?
Absolutely.
Why don't can I read 13, 14, and 15?
Sure.
And then you do 16 through 21, is that okay?
That works.
Okay. Now when Jesus heard it, he's talking about John's death, he withdrew from there in a boat to a lonely place by himself, And when the multitudes heard of this, they followed him on foot from the cities. And when he went ashore, he saw a great multitude and felt compassion for them and healed their sick. And when it was evening, the disciples came to him, saying, "The place is desolate, and the time is already past. So send the multitudes away, that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves."
And Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up into heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. And I'm going through 21?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great. So if you can imagine the Herod perspective of, I just killed the sort of the radical prophet of this movement,
Mm-hmm.
and now 25,000 people have just gathered, and now Jesus is feeding them. You know, ones in the ancient world, we don't talk about it like this today. It's still the same, but in the ancient world, the way you had an army was because you could feed them. And so, do you think Jesus is playing right into that?
I don't think Jesus is stupid.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder. If he's not intending to play directly into that, he's at least willing for it to be able to be read that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that would make the empire nervous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they already were.
That's right. That's right, because they killed John. Okay, so what about the organization that takes place, switching from, okay, so Jesus switches from, the disciples say, we don't have anything, send them away. And Jesus, he says, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat.
Yeah.
What kind of do we take something away from that in terms of pastoral ministry or training or lay ministry or anything?
Yeah. What I take away from it is that the disciples kind of expect to be able to stay with Jesus, and that other people would not need to or
Okay.
should not.
So they're going to stick around, but
They're going to stay.
other people need to go.
Yep, they need
Okay.
to go figure this out for themselves, because obviously this is overwhelming.
Uh-huh.
Which is interesting, because Jesus left an overwhelming situation to go be by himself. And so we see the difference between his response and the disciples' response to, we just wanted some time alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Good.
he says they don't need to go away. I don't know what sort of switch happened, or if a switch even had to have happened in Jesus' mind. Like, maybe not. Maybe he knew that people would follow him out there. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow he's mentally prepared for that, and decides to make this a time when people should be able to be kept together, instead of a time whenever it's just about him and his disciples. But this is about the community of people
Yep.
who have gathered
Yep.
in such a time as this.
Right.
And they need to be able to stay together.
That's right.
And he's going to make that possible by
Right.
feeding them.
Right. So, can you hear the kids outside?
I can.
Yeah.
I doubt that the video can, but
Okay,
it's
they're
pretty
cracking
fun.
me up. So he, for me, it's like I have to. It's like digging deep. And so I'm tired, I'm worn out, oppressed, and then all of a sudden there's more to do. But as you're speaking, and as I hear it through your voice, I don't think that he is thinking, oh, here's more to do.
Right.
He's not, is he?
I don't think so. I've
No.
always thought that way until this read through.
Mm-hmm.
But he might not be thinking like I would have been thinking.
Right.
Which isn't it like Jesus to not think like I would?
Yeah, right. So, okay, you just get through this multi-day funeral that is tragic and has greater implications than just one person's death.
Mm-hmm.
And you're worn out, and you also don't want to be taken into captivity. You don't want to be arrested.
You're next.
Right? And it's, in some regard, I think, okay, I got 2 more letters and 6 more phone calls, and this was supposed to be my day off, and blah, 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 blah. While we need to take days off, I'm not trying to.
Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm not speaking about that. I'm just saying that I think, okay, here's more to do. And I don't think he's viewing the people or the food as more to do.
No. And also, it couldn't be the case that he's viewing them as you're ruining my hiding spot.
No. No, it's not. No, it's not. Say more.
So then, what is he doing? Like,
Mhm.
I feel like what we've done is ruled out the ways that we would normally interpret this,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right.
So then we're kind of in new ground.
Yeah.
It can't be the ways that we've thought about it. It can't be just about him. Obviously, it's not.
Right.
It's not just about, I'm fearing for my life and fleeing and hiding. You can't hide. We all played clumps as a kid, right, in youth group.
Right.
Like, you can't hide well with a whole
Right.
20,000 clump of people.
No, there's no hiding. It's the opposite of hiding.
Right.
It's a festival.
So Jesus isn't doing this out of fear, and he's not doing this out of, like,
Obligation.
no. But he's affirming the desire of people to be together with him in this moment.
Yep.
And making it possible. And telling the disciples that they should also be making it possible,
Yep.
right? Not
Yep.
just, this isn't about even my time alone with my favorite people, or the
Preach.
people I'm most comfortable with.
That's right.
It's, I mean, we were talking beforehand, you mentioned in John later, like, these people, when he explains this to the crowd who gathered, this is the same group of people that most of them fall away. That he says, I've fed you, real food and meat is my flesh and my blood, and we're like, what is that? And they all leave. And then he gets his alone time with his disciples who say, we don't have anywhere else to go.
Right.
But not because he desired that outcome, but
Right.
because people could not handle the
Couldn't go
fullness
with
of
him,
what he
yeah.
was. So his desire here is to make it possible and to give them a chance to join in.
Uh-huh.
It's an invitation.
Yeah.
His food is an invitation
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And the disciples are saying, we don't want to extend this invitation. We
Right.
want to stay in our safe group.
Right.
These are difficult times.
These are difficult times. And Jesus is expanding the group at the most crucial, difficult time,
Yep.
instead of circling the wagons.
Yep.
He's spending, he's giving, he's thanking, he's breaking, he's taking, he's teaching, he's training. I mean, this is obviously just some training that, well, hey, Jimmy, we're recording. Come on. That's all right.
You get a
This'll be-
cameo.
This will be funny. I'm not doing any editing.
I'm leaving.
It's a one take.
I was here, now I'm going.
Goodbye.
I'm going to have a baby for you.
Okay.
No, but I think we do that as believers. Like, isn't their whole theology around whenever the world is going crazy, we just kind of buckle down and
Yep.
get in a safe spot and
Right.
wait for Jesus to come?
Right.
And what his disciples see here is keep extending,
Keep extending.
even to people who aren't going to stay with you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, surely Jesus knows people's hearts, right?
Mhm.
He
Right.
knows that
Yes.
these people aren't all truly his people.
Mm-hmm.
But he's extending in that time.
Whether they get it or not,
Right,
he's still giving. Yeah.
yep. And,
I'm sorry. I
and then they
interrupted.
find 12 basketfuls left over. Like, we think that the way that the Lord provides for us is by, like, retreating and being by ourselves with him. And he says, you keep doing the work, you keep expanding the kingdom.
Mhm.
Or offering that possibility, and you will still find yourself provided for. Like, in giving when you don't think you can give, or when you would feel safer
Mhm.
making sure that you yourself are taken care of and making that 5 loaves and 2, whatever it is, that little bit of food extend between the 14 of you or
Mhm.
something, like,
Mhm.
you find yourself still provided for, even
Mhm.
like, you do the work and
Right.
Jesus will take care of you.
Right.
And they think it's you do the work and so Jesus takes care of you by
Right.
yourself somewhere else in a special club, but
Right.
it's
Nope.
not that.
In the work is when you are taken care of.
Yeah,
It's not work, then get taken care of, or minister and then get taken care of. It's almost, at least in this scene, is in the ministry is where everything occurs.
yeah,
It doesn't, I mean, it sounds stupid to say that out loud, but it's not like training happens in a vacuum. It's not like rest and rejuvenation happens in a vacuum. They are filled up and overflowing in the work.
yeah,
And so the work must not be, or the ministry, or it must not be as tough in certain ways that we often think of it as tough.
yeah. I mean, isn't that what we found?
It is what we found.
That is what we found. And what I have to be reminded of, like in our work, whenever I first, our book study with you was live in the place you minister. And so often, like, I think of missionaries, like you build your own sort of haven.
Yeah.
And even there are ways I still think of my house this way. Like I want to build my haven that I can like leave and go do ministry from and then come back home to this safe place. And there's not a safe
No.
place. There's just not.
No.
It's not the theology that Jesus is giving his disciples in this passage. It's
Right.
not build your spiritual retreat space,
Right.
like build your camp, build your
Right.
base,
Right. Your
establish
compound.
somewhere
Right.
that you leave to go minister. No.
That is not the method of Jesus.
And your healing is found in the
Mhm.
being together. Like the
Right.
restoration of your soul
right.
isn't found by retreat from the world. It's
Yep.
in the middle of all of it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, another way, we often think of this in terms of personal holiness, but it doesn't, we don't have to view it that way. I mean, that would be a way we approach the text from our background. But the text may not be talking about personal holiness when it says, be in the world but not of the world.
Right.
Right? As soon as I say that, everybody thinks about piety.
Right. I need to make sure that I'm
right?
good here.
Right? What if that's not about piety at all?
Well, how could it be
I
if the
know.
commandment is to love your neighbor? How is there holiness in your
That's right.
own, like, by yourself?
No, there isn't.
That comes in practicing loving your neighbor, and
Right.
I have to be around people
Right.
to do that.
Even hermits, or fancy word, sorry, viewers, Cenobites.
Oh, that one loses me too. I don't know what that is.
Even those living by themselves in some sort of monastic way, ascetic way, they are loving the world, and they are in relationship with others, and people visit them,
Mhm.
and they teach, and there is no.
Like even when they withdraw to a private place, people come to them
It's
for
amazing.
healing?
It's amazing.
Is that what you just
Yes, and in fact, in church history, when the city or the empire becomes more corrupt, the monastic locations flourish, almost like an antidote or a vaccine, you know. Like monastic practices are retreat type practices, like
Yeah, they're retreating
what
and
they're
people
doing
come
right here. Yeah.
for healing.
Or like vaccinations during the most overwhelming, crazy, uncertain times.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely what you've said about Jesus at a critical time, getting everybody together.
Yeah, I mean, even it just
I need
speaks
to
that,
get that in my head.
well, so do I. But whether you're whether he's going into the city or leaving it, it's for the sake of the community that he's building.
That's right.
Either way.
Either way. Yeah. I love it. So in a sense, we have Herod's feast,
Mhm.
which leads to the death of the prophet. And then we have Jesus' feast, which feeds 25,000 and more, and there's left over. Plus somehow it feeds his soul, his own soul.
Yeah.
And it also feeds the training of the disciples as they trek back to him across the camp, or across the festival, or the music festival that, well, you think, like where we watch concerts in Noblesville, won't that hold 20,000 people?
Maybe. I don't know. For some reason,
I'm
I've
going
been
off
picturing.
script.
I know.
Okay.
I've been picturing it as like the zone in Seattle that was like people all
Yes. Okay.
come there.
Yeah.
But we've done music. I mean, I used to go to a music festival called Cornerstone in
Yeah,
the middle
yeah.
of a cornfield. That
Bushnell, Illinois?
yes, that's a lot of people.
Yes.
People
Now-
don't just come with
Right.
like their bodies. Like they
Right.
bring some stuff. They
Their bags, their bathroom, food.
Yeah, that has to have happened.
Yeah.
So much human stuff.
Yes. And walking back to Jesus when he said, "You give them something to eat," and they're like, "We ain't got nothing," and now they have these baskets that they have to carry back through the camp, all the way up to him, and there's probably a little bit of joking or humor when he meets their disciples' eyes, right? Because they're lugging this big basket of food. Well, I appreciate your time, and I know everything feels overwhelming and is tiring, but your study, your life, your ministry, your words, your voice, your perspective are so valuable to me and my family and our street. So thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me.
You want the you want the last word?
Oh, I mean, I would just return the thanks, and
okay.
Because the way my perspective has been shaped by your perspective,
Okay.
and yeah, I'm excited for this and this opportunity for more people to be able to come together and to see Jesus in a different way. I think he's pretty merciful in the way that he responds to us and gives us what we need, and just wastes nothing.
Mhm.
Takes every
That's right.
opportunity.
Yep.
And so these
Even this
times are not
morning.
going to be wasted.
That's right.
And I would just bless everyone listening to receive this and to listen to what the Lord has for you in the context you're in with your neighbors. And I'm blessed to be able to do that with the same neighbors that Josh has, so it's great.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm gonna just turn this off.
All right.
Remember that we are meeting in person. Masks are required, and there's distancing. Please arrive at church no more than 15 minutes early, and then make the best decision for your health if you're gonna stay home. We'll keep doing the videos and connect and be together in that way. Love you very much. Bye.